That's all I can tell you.
Wow.
Just phenomenal human being. All right. Well, he did us a solid squeezing us in, man. And he's a gamer because it looks like the sun is beating down on his Irish skin as we speak right now. But he is still sharp. He's got the cacti in the back. This looks like a Phoenix live shot right here, man. Tim McManus does not play around. What's up, T-Mac?
It was either do this here, right by the pool where we're staying at in beautiful
the
Scottsdale,
pool.
Here we go.
Yeah,
here we
go.
go.
Either that or the hotel room. I figured I'd give you guys a little taste of the palm trees and sunshine out here.
I appreciate the effort, and I'm simultaneously jealous at the same time. It's a weird feeling that I have right now, Tim. But Tim joins us. You can check out Tim on Twitter at Tim_McManus. Of course, he's an ESPN Eagles NFL reporter. Tim, I want to start with this. You had a great piece, a piece that I loved. I guess it was 2 days ago, about the summer get-together that Jalen had with AJ Brown and a Marine, right? And it was in some nasty weather where the Marine trainer basically pulled up in his car, was like, yeah, dude, we're probably canceling this thing. And Jalen was like, we're not canceling anything, man. Walk us through that. It was a great piece. Oh, you're muted, Tim.
We lost you. You're muted.
We got your audio. We lost you for a second there. We see you. Give us a thumbs up if you hear us.
I hear you guys fine.
Okay, now we got you back.
Yep.
All right, sorry about that. So it was early July. AJ Brown had just gotten into town. It was the first time that Brown, Devontae Smith, and Jalen Hurts were all going to work out together. And the Marine trainer, Gabe Wrangle, he's the guy that works with Lane Johnson at his bro barn and also trains Hurts. He was the one. He likes to take guys to this one particular park because it's got this steep incline hill. And but they showed up that day, and it was like a torrential downpour. Wrangle shows up first. And he's like, yeah. It's like, this thing is not going off. He's like, I'm the special Marine Corps special ops guy. And I'm thinking, we're probably canceling this thing. But Hurts showed up, just got out of his car, sat down onto the wet grass and started lacing up his cleats and set the tone for everybody else who showed up. It's like, all right, I guess we're doing that. And so AJ Brown said that was really the first time that sent a message to the entire team that we're serious about this, that it doesn't really matter, what the conditions, what anybody throws at us, we're going to continue about our business. And that was kind of like the launch point, what obviously has turned out to be a pretty special season.
So Tim, I know you've been there for a little while. I'm assuming you've been out to the Eagles practice session, or is today the first true practice session you get to go to? What are some of the little things that you're going to be looking for in terms of who's up? We know most of the players are up, especially with the Avonte Maddox situation.
Yeah, so they only have one pool reporter that goes to each respective practices out of the group. So one for the Chiefs and one for the Eagles. So we have to get that kind of information secondhand, D-Gum. But what we do get the opportunity to do is be around the players in their media sessions. I was at their team hotel this morning. I was there yesterday talking to a bunch of the guys, and of course, in that insane media night on Monday night, we got to be around them as well. And so, in terms of health, you're looking for Avonte Maddox in the toe. The information there has been pretty positive. We saw him in a walking boot when he was back in Philly in the one day of practice, but he has since come out of that walking boot. That was more precautionary. They believe that he's going to be okay for this game. The other one is Landon Dickerson. He's got a massive matchup, right, with Chris Jones, and he has a hyperextended right elbow that he's going to be wearing a brace on. That's one to keep in mind. But, so obviously, and then Jalen Hurts, he's been dealing with that sprained shoulder since December 18th. I got some interesting, throwing stats to throw your guys' way if you want to get into that a little bit later. But he's been practicing. He's been back up and running. If you look at the big picture, health-wise, the Eagles have just about all their starters up and running. So they're in pretty good shape there.
Tim, one area, and Gunnar and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. Kansas City is not very good red zone defensively, and it's an area where the Eagles really thrive. And KC's offense is real good, but their defense isn't necessarily. Is that something that's been a talking point? Is that an area you think the Eagles could really make some hay here?
I think they have to, because this is by far the best offense that they have faced, and certainly in the postseason. Like Patrick Mahomes just operates at a different level. And one stat, that caught my eye, Rob, was that, the pass blocking win rate the Chiefs are number one in that category all year. So not only is Mahomes, the best quarterback on the planet, but he's been operating behind an offensive line that has kept their quarterback as clean as any team in the NFL, which is to say that as good as the Eagles defense is, points are going up in this game. Mm-hmm. And I just don't think that, the Eagles offense can afford to make trips into the red zone and come out with 3, and certainly not 0. So, they're going to have to continue that trend, and they've been very good in the red zone for the bulk of the year. And certainly they got to keep that trend up if they want to go kind of slug for slug with this heavyweight offense in Kansas City.
Tim, I've been saying basically all week long, you look at how nicked up Kansas City appears to be on the surface in terms of their wide receiving core. You're not going to have Mecole Hardman for the game, but now you got Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming back. And the one thing about this Chiefs offense is you don't need you have a star in Kelsey, but when you lose a guy the caliber of a Tyreek Hill, but yet the machine continues to roll, it tells you that it's more than about just the individual players. It's about their system. I mean, you can't lose a Tyreek Hill and finish the league number 1 in passing and number 1 in touchdowns and not tell people that we can plug and play anybody in here and be successful.
It's pretty amazing, D-Gun. And actually, Mahomes hit on this on Monday. And they asked, what's the key to that? And his answer was Andy Reid. He's like, Reid will have any amount of guys come through here, and the same success continues to happen, particularly on offense. And, that's one thing that really stands out to me when we're looking at this matchup. And it struck me as they're both standing on the stage on that opening night. And it's a total circus in there, and it can be really overwhelming. And, the crowd's going crazy, and there's 1,000 media members. And there's Andy Reid and Nick Sirianni. And this is like old hat for Reid at this point, right? He's in his 24th season. He's been to Super Bowl after Super Bowl. Now it's become like a regular thing during his time in Kansas City. So he's been there, done that. And, Sirianni, this is brand new. I mean, this is second year as a head coach, his first trip as a head coach into the Super Bowl. And for as good as Sirianni has been, you just can't fake the amount of experience that Reid has had on this big stage. And obviously you can tell by the results on offense by Kansas City, to your point, even with Tyreek Hill gone, that machine has continued to roll.
Yeah. And that's the thing, Tim. I mean, in terms of Sirianni, I think it gets really lost because of his personality sometimes and the way he reacts on a sideline, but his teams are always ready, man. And he's really good in game. Like we're hypercritical of the team that we cover, that you root for and all those kind of things. But I don't remember a lot of times this year saying he should have used the timeout there. Why didn't he challenge that? He has a good feel when to go for it, when not to. I don't see that changing. I'm just saying this is the grandest of stage. I feel good about him, even with his lack of experience going into the game, that he's going to be on point with that stuff.
And he's been talking, Rob, just about, not changing who you are now. You basically sticking to the script. And I think that's absolutely the right way to go about this game, especially when it comes to aggressiveness. We know that the Eagles, traditionally have been one of the more aggressive teams on offense, going for it on fourth down, not afraid to do that. Huge moment in the 49ers game that really kind of turned the tide, where they did it in their own territory on fourth down, and it kind of changed the whole way that game flowed. And I think that he has to stay true to it now. And that's kind of where, when you're in these big moments, you kind of lean back. It's good to lean back on analytics. Like, the decisions are already made in these kind of situations, where you don't have to pause and think, oh, what am I going to do here? Because you've already gone through that. You've already kind of crunched the numbers. You already know what the process is. And so he's going to have to lean back on that, because I have no doubt, when the fireworks are going off and it's, the bedlam of Super Bowl 57, that there's, it's got to take your breath away at some point, right?
No doubt.
For a young coach.
Yeah.
Tim, as we get closer to game time, what are the most prominent storylines for you as you start to analyze the pluses and the minuses of this matchup?
Yeah, so I'll go on both sides of the ball for the Eagles. Defensively, it just, may seem simplistic, but my God, they've been so good at rushing the passer this year, D-Gun. 70 sacks. Like, sometimes I feel like we just kind of gloss over that. It was the third most ever in NFL history. And then you look at the way that they took over the Niners game, and particularly the way that Hassan Reddick took over that Niners game. And you know just how critical that is and what that can mean against a hobbled Patrick Mahomes. Like if they can change the line of scrimmage, if they can kind of climb over the walls and harass Mahomes, then that changes the entire dynamic of that offense and of the game at large. And so that's where I'm circling for sure on the defensive side of the ball. And then circling back to Hurts on offense for a second. So I asked the people at ESPN Stats and Information to kind of look at the accuracy numbers of Hurts from before the injury versus after. And it's pretty striking, guys. And it's a smaller sample size. You know, he hasn't played as many games, clearly. And one of those games was against San Francisco's defense. So you put all those things in its proper context. But his accuracy has gone from 67 to 61% overall. But the most striking is his passes of 20-plus yards, right, where he's going down the field. He had an off-target percentage during most of the regular season of 35%, which put him towards the top tier. That has jumped to 50%. Since that injury. So his downfield throwing, he's been more off by a significant margin, since he injured that throwing arm, which I guess makes sense to a certain extent, but it's also something to keep in mind. He's got to be able to click on at least one or two of those deep balls. And most importantly, he can't throw it to the wrong guy. I mean, he can't be off target and that go into the hands of one of the Kansas City defensive backs.
No, Tim, you make a great point because as you referenced it earlier, as good as the Eagles defense is, this is Mahomes and Kansas City and Andy Reid, man. You're going to have to put up points. Like there are going to be shots down the field. I think that's an area where they're susceptible, Kansas City. And it can't be overthrowing AJ Brown like he did, in the San Francisco game. He's got to be able to connect here.
No doubt. And I think that, you also need to stay true to the ground game. And that may be tested at times. My feeling going into this one is there can be a feast or famine element to the Eagles ground game against this Kansas City Chiefs defense, where they're going to be shooting gaps and they're going to be taking some risks and they're going to try to take advantage of, a guard pulling and being able to fill that gap real quickly and grab somebody in the backfield. Like that's going to happen in this matchup. The flip side to that is that if Kansas City's a little bit late doing that, then all of a sudden Miles Sanders or Kenny Gainwell or Boston Scott or maybe even Jalen Hurts is going to have a large avenue to run down. And so I think that it's important, especially when you are going up against a potent offense, you want to be able to control the game. You want to be able to control the clock a little bit, and you want to be able to lean on what's been your bread and butter for the most part. So, yes, I agree. You mix in some of those shots, but you also stay true to what's gotten you here. And they've been the most successful ground game in the entire NFL for the past 2 years now.
Have you started to see the volumes of people increase coming to Scottsdale in the Phoenix area, or is it still kind of sporadic?
Oh yeah, no, it's starting to fill up here, Gunner, slowly but surely, and and they're price gouging a little bit here, like hotel rates. I took a look at what the around the golf, like maybe I can sneak one in. I can't afford one, the way that they're doing it, but yeah, they have a nice setup downtown. It's more spread out here certainly than it was in Minneapolis. Like they have one team hotels in Scottsdale. One of them is like in the outskirts of Phoenix. Downtown area holds some of that stuff. And so it's not like you remember from the 2017 year in Minneapolis, it was like everything was just in the mall. Like you would see the players walking by, being at a burrito joint, and Radio Row is right there. And all that, everything was contained in a very small footprint. But you are starting to see, the volume of people escalate. You've been hearing the fair share of Eagles chants out here. They're going to be well represented, as you can imagine.
Tim, walk us through for just what your job entails. Are you just going nonstop? Is it crazy? I mean, is it the second you get up, you're covering, you're doing a TV hit, you're doing this, obviously you're jumping on with us and we appreciate it, but is it just nonstop for you the entire time?
It was early on. Like I feel like today is probably the first day where I can actually take a breath. I was over at the Eagles facility today to do a TV hit in the morning, but I got like a lot of hay in the barn. Thankfully, I did my feature work, tried to write the majority of that before I got here to Scottsdale, and so now I'm just kind of focusing on news stories and going to the team availabilities. But the first couple of days are just completely hectic. I mean, especially when you get in and then you're trying to get yourself situated and there's a lot of stories that you're still trying to crank out. And you got that media night, which goes on for hours and it's just total bedlam. So it's busy, but it's a good busy now.
Right.
Like now I've found a rhythm now that we're in kind of midweek of Super Bowl week here.
That's good, man. That's good. Well, let me follow up on Hurts because, obviously we know the work ethic, the intangibles and all those kind of things, but and you wrote about this. There are a lot of doubters, man. I mean, even his own organization flirted with potentially, Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson or whatever. This was by no means a done deal in a lot of people's eyes, that he was going to be able to catapult into what he's turned into. He always handles himself right, but do you get a sense that a little bit of him is like, yep, yeah, feeling pretty good about myself right now in terms of some of the haters or the doubters?
There's no doubt he uses every little bit of that. And that's one thing that has kind of come into focus for me, being around his best friend, AJ Brown, and him kind of shedding light on his personality a little bit, is that like everything that has happened to him, every source of fuel that he could potentially get about ways that he's been slighted, he takes every bit of that and he puts that in a canister and he uses that for fuel along the way. And it's obviously, been really good for him. The one question that I had for Sirianni yesterday, and this is on my mind, and now we obviously know he's been very steady-handed. He's handled every situation as a 24-year-old with a type of composure that I could only wish to have at that age, let alone at this age, right? But now he's on the biggest stage. And the one thing that he said at the beginning of this playoff run, as you guys remember, is he's like, I'm not just hungry for this, I'm starving for it.
Yep.
And so my question to Sirianni is like, how do you make sure that he doesn't press, that he doesn't try to do too much now that you have this starving, young, motivated quarterback on the biggest stage going up against Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes? And he basically said, the fact that he can lean on a roster as talented as this, really helps him out in this kind of situation. And the message that they're driving home is just to kind of do what you have been doing to get here, and don't try to be extra now that you're on this extra big stage. And the other thing that Hurts is doing is he's been reaching out to some of his mentors. So he's talked to Peyton Manning. Manning told him like exactly how he attacked his preparation during his Super Bowl runs. He's been talking with Donovan McNabb. McNabb telling him, just treat this game like any other. But easier said than done. I mean, This is, this is a young man on a big stage, and I'm really curious to see how he handles it.
Tim, think about how quickly time has flown since we first learned that a kid named Jalen Hurts was coming to Philadelphia, when it shocked us all that the Eagles spent a second-round pick on a quarterback after just giving a franchise quarterback that mega contract. And then we watched Jalen go through the baptism of being a starting quarterback in 2021. Nobody could have imagined to the level in which he would improve his game in 2022. And here we stand on the cusp of another Super Bowl in 5 years. The ride has been incredible in terms of where he is right now and how this organization recovered from that 5-year absence of the last Super Bowl to this one.
I remember talking to one of his former teammates at Alabama right around the time that this all happened, where he got drafted in the second round. And his response was, I was really surprised they did it. Mm-hmm. And because he's such an alpha, that guys just gravitate towards him. And his prediction, this former teammate's prediction, was that was going to happen in the locker room, that guys were going to gravitate towards Hurts. And if you're gravitating towards Hurts, you're gravitating away, from Carson. Mm-hmm. And just kind of watching the dynamics of how Hurts carried himself on the field as a rookie, you kind of felt that. It's not that he's intentionally trying to do it. He just can't help it. He's just got this sort of gravitational pull towards him, and he won over a lot of people very quickly. Now, that being said, like, I talked to his personal trainer, Quincy Avery, the guy that works with him, his throwing instructor during the offseason. And he's like, I thought that Hurts would be like a top 10 quarterback this year. He's like, but I didn't even see this coming. Like, I didn't see an MVP. Like, now you have to say, the way he's been playing this year, what, top 5, top 3? I mean, I don't know how you want to quantify it, but it's right up there in terms of production, and certainly, how he's been able to carry this team to wins. He's 16-1 as a starter this year. There's only been one guy in the history of the NFL that has gone 17-1 in the season and has won the Super Bowl. That's Joe Montana. Like, it's ridiculous. the kind of air that he has gotten into very quickly. And yeah, I mean, even guys closest to him didn't see this rate of success, but nobody doubted, the kind of intentionality that he has, and how dedicated he is to this craft. And man, we've seen the fruits of that.
T-Mac, we appreciate it, brother. Thank you for a couple minutes.
Real quick, T-Mac, isn't Scottsdale a beautiful place?
Oh my God. Speaking of like top 5, this would be a top 5 city for me to move to.
I know, man. I love that Phoenix area, dude.
Beautiful, man.
Palm trees, mountains, and sunshine. What's
better? Yeah, that's right. That's right. Tim, keep up the good work. Yeah, we will. We'll follow you at Tim_McManus, and of course ESPN Eagles NFL reporter. Timmy, thanks, man. Appreciate
it, gentlemen. Always good to see you.
Take care. So speaking of people who have made their home in the Phoenix, Arizona area, the greater Phoenix area, how about our guy, the one and only Seth Joyner? We roll from one great guest